We could keep this very short. Galway are definitely going to win.
There's a lot of lads down the hospital that'll be getting statues before me, so there is.
Described as a blessing that thought he was missing. A strange kind of blessing, Patrick.
That national narrative, and does my head in, that we're reliant on Joe Canning. Like, oh my God.
Turkey Burke was in full forward, causing all sorts of problems. Then they were able to bring Badger on for Turkey.
Some might say he did a good job on Conor Whelan. I would say, from my point of view, that he spent half the day assaulting him.
So a bad week at senior level for Galway. Probably got a bit worse this morning with the news that Joe Canning has stepped away. I suppose, in my view, and I know James Skehill is with me alongside, well, question is the best player I've ever seen play for Galway anyway. I'm sure you'll have your own thoughts on that as well, James. Player who had it all. I think, Jesus, from the first time we've ever witnessed him, I think, you knew you were seeing a special talent right from the off. I suppose above anyone, James, you probably, outside maybe his club teammates, you've been involved with him more than anyone, from underage with LIT, Fitzgibbon, the whole way up. Sad way from, way to bow out maybe a bit in the end, with 2 defeats on the bounce, but feels like a bit of an era in the way.
Oh, it is. It's definitely an engineer. Like, you mentioned there about the first time I saw him or laid eyes on him, say, was actually at a skill. Remember the failure skills competitions that used to go on before? Yeah. And the puck fod used to be the same day. So I was definitely not in the skills competition. I was in the puck fod. I pushed as long as he can. But he was in the skills, And it was the first time I had seen an under 14 or 13 put the ball out over a net from the sideline in my life. I'd never seen it before. And I was going, the name of God is that like. Yeah. But so them days, I recognised him, didn't know who he was. Then 2 weeks later, we were playing Portumna under 14 below Portumna. And this lad was I can't remember, was it a red or white helmet? JC destroyed us. So I made my business to go up and see who he was. You know what I mean? Needless to say, we were playing 24 a couple of months later together. But from the off, let's say, he was just majestic. You know what I mean? He would, especially from my perspective, like coming from a very low skill set, from a club that won't really be on the map. I was looking at this guy going, Jesus, this is what we all have to get to. You know what I mean? Look at this guy. He's only 13, and he's doing some ridiculous stuff. He's 12 at the time, excuse me. But it then grew from there. Like when he went into under 16, he was playing, senior hurling with Portumna at 15. One of their nearly their main players, if you know what I mean. And he just he continued to do things every day. I thought at some stages when I was 16 or 17 or 18 that I'd seen it all from now. So that's it now. He can't pull any more rabbits out of the hat or do any more tricks, but he kept doing it every day. He's probably the best hurler. He's the best hurler I've ever seen. He's the best hurler I've definitely ever played with. Without him, I wouldn't have won half what I won, because every team I was on, successful-wise, he was the main guy on it. And that goes to underage, inter-county, Fitzgibbon, around college, etc. All those teams, he was the main guy on it, and did wonders for Galway, inspired generations of young people. It is an end of an era. The only thing that disappoints me is the fact that you'll have the odd idiot who will look at records and say he's only won in Ireland. How can he be amongst the greats? Of course he can. If we're talking about great hurlers, right, he is definitely up there. He's in the conversations with Shefflin and Ring and all these people, and I just don't want any records to even tarnish that, or even try to tarnish it, because they look at Shefflin's 9 or 10 records and for all Ireland's, and they'll say, oh, Shefflin's better. But for me, Joe was the all-time great, best ever. A really good guy as well. Everyone look at what he did on the pitch, and they're kind of a tribute hurling to him, being that's him and only him. But I remember, let's say, after my old fella passed in 2009, but he came down from Portumna to help me fill the turf. Do you know what I mean? Something simple like that, and that kind of stuff. Yeah. That kind of stuff sticks with the fella. Do you know what I mean? That's 12 years ago. So he was down there and brought it all home. We gave him the cabbage and bacon after. But he was there. Do you know what I mean? He was the guy that came down and gave us a hand, and like that, he gave my little girl her first hurling Christmas. They're just gone. Them little things are things that people don't see. And even he wouldn't like them spoken about, because that's the type of person he is. So he's a good guy, a good person, and the best hurler that has ever walked the earth, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's what you're just talking about. Him underage there, I think was she's after a Debs or a Grads or something. I remember sick head the next day. I think I went to Ardrahan, and I think it was Portumna playing Ballingerry. I don't know who dragged me along. Anyway, I was going just for a look. Anyway, and we're still playing with the juvenile Schlitter at the time, and seeing Canning. And we knew who he was at this time. I think half the country even knew who he was by the time he was 16. and he stood over 21 anyway, and with the juvenile ball now and the power he even had at that time, I swear it was the fastest ball I ever saw hit. I'd say, I was thinking, as a goalie as yourself, I'd be diving out of the bloody way of the thing instead of trying to get behind it. But he nearly put it through the net. It was the hardest I think I ever seen a schnitzel move in my life anyway. But we just all have these memories of him. Like he was a superstar before his time. Like James, like I think. You mentioned it there. You seen him when he was 14 or 15 or even younger. You said 13, should I say? Yeah. And we'd all heard about him, and there was such a heavy weight on his shoulders. And he had a huge burden to carry. And I suppose one of the biggest compliments that I kind of said it just there on Twitter, like it'd be, no matter what, when you had him in your team, you always felt like you had a chance going out as a Galway supporter. Even if the players, at times mightn't be All-Ireland contenders, he always gave you that chance, I think, anyway. Would that be something you'd go along with as well?
Yeah, I definitely would. Like, I look at, there's certain teams that come into my head and say, we didn't have the best team then. Like, I think of our minor team in 06, we weren't the best team on paper. We got to a final and draw. Our under-21 team in 2009, when he scored 4-7 against Clare, as Galway teams go, that probably was one of the weaker ones I was on, just overall. And like we shoved Clare to extra time. You know what I mean? That was that Clare team was frittered with lads, who occupied the 2013 senior team and still occupy some of the positions today. So you're right, exactly what you say in your assessment. He always had that game-changing moment, and that game-changing moment could come in any way, shape, or form, in the sense that he was deadly in the air, deadly off both sides, deadly off 21s and place balls. He could do this great thing whereby the ball would come in from low and he'd be turning and he's touching, if you know what I mean. Like 99% of hurlers come out to touch the ball and then they turn, but he was able to turn and touch at the same time, and that created more opportunities for him. Like, he scored a goal against WIT, and if it's given in 2007, he did that. He was, I'm not sure who he was marking now, but he came out anyway, and as he was turning, the ball was coming and he just picked it up into his hand and was gone and net. Do you know what I mean? And that kind of brief moment, just that little slip of the magic that no one else can do, to say it would unlock something for you, even in spite what kind of talent you had in your team or lack thereof. But he, look, you're on about 21s there as well. My God, you'd nearly be afraid, honest to God, standing goals. I'm not lying to you now. Like, when you put a juvenile ball into his head, that even when it got to the senior level, you'd be thinking, oh, like, Jesus, this ball is going to come 150 miles an hour. Like, do you know what I mean? And when you get hit by it, oh, it's just it's not a good time. Do you know what I mean? Some days I was thinking, was he doing it on purpose? Do you know what I mean?
The problem was you were daft enough to stand in front of the bloody thing, so there's no good hitting you. But just James, for lads, people that wouldn't know, you know what I mean, maybe an insight into there. What was he like in the dressing room? As a player, was he kind of vocal, or would he be more quiet, or was he kind of leading by example? Just kind of, for the likes of us who never have been in the dressing room with him, what kind of figure was he like? He obviously commanded huge respect with his ability.
Yeah, like, so first of all, he's respected all around, and like I would class him as somewhere in the middle. You've got some guys who are excellent talkers, and they don't quite lead as much in the pitch. You get some guys who lead through performance and don't talk at all, but he was very much, I think, in the middle. He definitely led on the pitch by his performance. That's obvious. With regards to saying stuff, he'd only say stuff if it was really applicable at the time. There was no real, he wouldn't be filling the dressing room with words for the sake of filling with words, you know what I mean? And like we see that far too often now in some teams, where just talk for the sake of the talk, and it saps energy out of teams. But he'd be very much of if something needs to be pointed out, or there was a structure change, or even something like from a motivation perspective, he would say it. You know what I mean? So like he definitely speak when it needed to be spoken, and he led all the time. So even if we're in dire straits in games, he kept looking away, kept going for the goals. You saw on Saturday, Evans enough, like when records are on the line, he's trying to set up goals, trying to go from goals at angles, trying to put them in top corners of the net, and just that's kind of a guy that you want to go behind, let's say. And like he'd be kind of an unassuming character too. He'd be quite reserved, very measured. I would have always called him very measured. There'd be he'd never be too low or too high. Do you know what I mean? He'd never be too excited or hyper. Like I was guilty of being hyper all the time, and sometimes to mess with your head, but he was always very, very measured. You know what I mean? And like that, there was always a quiet confidence. And like his abilities are second to none. So that's why I think he was so measured, so confident. But like his abilities were only nurtured through practice, and that's why he set good examples for people on training pitches throughout, his free-taking practice and his sideline practice. And again, nobody sees the work that he put in, to come back from any injury. Like, he had big surgeries in the last number of years, took big hits, you know what I mean? But he always came back, and the hours that he put in will never ever be seen or quantified to people who don't who don't have access to the dressing room or access to him on a personal level. So that's something that can't go unnoticed, like the drive within himself to keep going after he had serious injury after serious injury after serious injury. And also you touched on the pressure that he encountered, like as a youngster. Like he was, and I'm open to correction here, David, but I think he was 15, maybe 16, would it be 16 or 17? No, I'm correct, 16 or 17 where he came on in 21, which at the time was unheard of, you know. And he played against Kilkenny in Tullamore, and he gave John, I don't know, did he give John Dodge or John Tennyson, John Cordy an offer going over? I think he came on and got 2-4. He was so effective that time that actually they were debating bringing him into the senior squad the week after, at something like 16 or 17, which is unheard of. Back then, you know what I mean? Back then was unheard of. So that just goes to show the measure of the type of player he was at a young age, and obviously then what he brought to the senior setup is, you know, second to none.
Yeah. Do you feel the time is right now to step away, James? You know, kind of looking in from the outside, or, you know, personally speaking, and we said it before we came on air, maybe he'd a small bit more to offer. Like maybe, you know, maybe it wasn't for full 70 minutes for seasons ahead, but, you know, maybe that bit of, you know, maybe, you know, coming on for 25 minutes or, you know, playing 40 minutes or here and there. You know, I think he still had bits to offer, and it was showing last weekend, you know, again against Waterford, what he can do.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I don't know. I would think differently about this. So people are always and the general hurling public or the fraternity would look back on Joe and they'd always think of the high spots and, you know, the highlights that he offered, let's say, and, you know, think that hurling, his performance is all that he should be associated with. Like, I would think different now from a player's perspective because I've lived it. I'd be thinking about the injuries he's carried, where he is in his professional life, where he is in his personal life, you know, with girlfriends and whatnot, where he is in trying to get. I mentioned before about if you're trying to get a house, or, you know, all these things would weigh in on a decision, like, you know. And again, I mentioned on the injuries that he suffered, you know, like chronic pain is classed as 6 weeks. So if you go through pain for 6 weeks, to say that's classed as chronic pain. And I can tell you that a lot of hurlers play with that chronic pain for a long time, and I've gone through it, and I guarantee he's gone through it with all the injuries he's had. So I would question, for a quality life too, is it time to get out? You know what I mean? And maybe that's getting a bit too deep into it, but like, you don't want to be walking around the crutches in 15 years' time. You're only flipping 45, 46. You know what I mean? So I always think there's more to the game. For me, there's more to the game. Obviously, he's associated with the game since he was been a toddler, with going to training with Ollie, let's say. So it's been his life, you know. So it must have been an extremely hard decision. But I think I saw somewhere that he said he was content with the decision. Is the time right? I don't know, I mentioned before recently that I don't know, is it even possible? But I said that I would like to see something done with him, in the sense that, you know, what New Zealand did with Richie McCaw for the World Cup, when they kind of put him in cotton wool as such and then released him for the World Cup. You know what I mean? They took him out of club action, took him out of country action, and then gave him a full break of rejuvenation. And similar to Dan Carter, like, could something be done done with Joe? I'd like to see him. I don't want to see him step away, to be honest, because I think he's a lot to offer in the right system. You know what I mean? Because he's still got, like, up here, like, it's still 2 steps ahead of physical ability. You know what I mean? And sure, he's way ahead of everyone else up there. You know what I mean? So I think physically, for 70 minutes, or for all the grueling work and hours that goes into travel to training, the S&C, all the training, injury cover, I think all that probably his time is right for him. If he could have been, if his career could be structured a bit better, let's say, or even his time could be structured to allow him to, you know, strike when the iron is hot, let's say, come summer, maybe not. But even a reduced role, would he want to play a reduced role? You know what I mean? Could you ever, like, I always found it hard to watch Sheffield playing the reduced role when he won his ass at Ireland. You know what I mean? I don't know what he wants to do with it. Like, only he can say that. But look, if he's made the decision, he says content to the decision, maybe then for him, time is right. You know what I mean?
That's it. But yeah. But just from speaking to people since it, and maybe people who would have known him, they said that probably he wouldn't be happy maybe to sit out training sessions or not push himself to the limit. Maybe that's an element of his personality as well, where he wants to do himself justice all the time, which maybe was a factor in it as well. You know, that's a very interesting point though you make in terms of, you know, potentially whack him up in cotton wool. I don't think I've ever seen a scenario like that in the GEA beforehand, and I don't know. I don't know if it's a runner either. Like, you know what I mean? Like, as I'm sure Portumla would be, and sure, you know, he's unquestionably he's put in huge commitment for Portumla, like, as well, you know. And I think he's just said in interviews in the past, if not to compare to the success you had with the club, and I'm sure you'd probably say the same as well, you know. You know, that bit of, you know, with Cappy is probably, you know, that getting there. Like if you ever were to get there, it probably would mean more than potentially in All Ireland.
Yeah, and Tommy Walsh said the same thing to me before on our tour in America. There, going back years ago, he said that he would give back all his Irelands with Kilkenny for actually a county title, senior county title with Tyrone. That stuck with me at a time when I was only 25 years of age. Going, this is one of the all-time greats, like a hero of mine. Looking at him and he's saying, that like he'd give everything back that he's won and all the accolades he's won for one club title. And again, it's only when you get a bit older you actually appreciate things you've done. Where I'd be honest with you, David, at the time, like when we first came up intermediate, I didn't appreciate it because I'm not going to lie to you. I'll admit this. Like I didn't actually appreciate the grade. Do you know what I mean? Or even respect the grade because I was probably a bit young and naive and stupid. Now where I stand right now, let's say, having that intermediate title in 08 that we won, is I recognise what the club did, what the people in that team did and all the people around us, and it was fantastic what they did for us. And now I really appreciate that medal, So it goes back to your question about Joe and the club. I do think the whole cotton wool thing would be an honour because like the club is where you start, it's where you're going to finish. They're your people, they're your blood, it's in the water over there. So it's very, very hard to somewhat step away for a season at the benefit of the county team, So I know what I said is a bit ludicrous, but it's an idea I'd float. And again, it's me being selfish.
Absolutely.
It's me being selfish, wondering could the fella Galway people keep him on another way,
Yeah. There's no harm in thinking outside the box afterwards. We could do a lot more of that in the GAA times, and just a small bit of that. But James, finally, just on Joe before we move on to the Waterford game, like it's a huge hole left in the dressing room, in the team, just in the county. You know what I mean? There's probably a state of mourning going on. We should probably have the day off, if nothing else, in Galway at the moment. But it's a hole that we're never going to fix because he's once in a lifetime. We probably will never see a player this good again, and it's been a joy to watch him, and for yourself, it's probably been a joy to play with him.
A joy to play with him. A joy. Playing is one thing, but just every day training with him. Just when you're in more relaxed settings and you have kind of private moments and whatever like that, and it is sad. Like you think, Jesus, it's nearly like a life milestone. You know what I mean? Where you start, you see, like it feels like yesterday you were kids down at the skills competition. Then it feels like just this morning that you were playing minor together, and here we are now, and I'm looking back at him and his career finished, and it's like it's a void. But it's going to be terribly hard to fill. She's going to be like I don't see anyone who's going to fill it. Like, and that may sound a bit harsh to the youngsters coming through, and I hope I'm wrong in the next few years. I really do, but I don't. Someone who came with the level of game he had, and the magnitude of scores on big days. That was the big day. The big day. You know what I mean? He was able to deliver on the big day. You think that the Leinster final in 12, Ireland final in 12, Leinster final in 15. You think of the bloody, the whole 17 campaign, the whole 18 campaign. You know what I mean? All these big days he repeated, excellence every day. I can't see who's going to come through and fill that void. So I think there's going to be more of a collective effort to try and fill it as opposed to an individual effort. But just look, an all-round good guy, an all-round great performance for 14 years ago from him.
Seems strange to kind of even have to move on and from that news today and try and reflect on the weekend, because at the end of the day it's probably a review show, and that's why when we initially contacted it, that was the whole idea behind it. But I suppose just on the Waterford game 7 weeks ago, James, I was kind of saying it to a fella as well. 7 weeks ago, we just came back from what was it, 7 or 8 points down against Cork in the league. We're crowned giant league winners. Everything was looking hunky dory, we'll say. Did you ever see, a championship coming like this? 2 defeats on the bounce, two desperately poor performances, and to bow out in such timid fashion. Did you ever see anything like that coming down the tracks?
I know. To answer you straight away, no, I did not. I definitely did not. I thought that we finished our league campaign relatively positively. Getting the joint winners was a plus. I thought Tip would nip us all. And the manner in which they came back against Cork and the manner of performance from a number of guys suggested that we're applying for a good championship performance. I was happy with the draw, to be honest. I thought Dublin would be the right way to start off. Didn't want to see a Wexford Kilkenny draw. And just the Dublin performance, I would have associated that with a Galway of old. I'm talking about Galway going back 15 years ago. I mean that potentially could have happened. I never would have associated with this type of Galway team, whereby, because there's such a good amount of leaders in the team that I thought, it wasn't possible. So I gave them the benefit of the doubt after the Dublin game. I think there's going to be a major kickback from the Waterford game. and didn't materialise. And then as you're going through the Waterford game, let's say even the first 15 minutes where we're kind of 6 each, and we've 3 or 4 frees and they have 6 from play, and they're opens up a bit. I was kind of watching hope as opposed to watching an expectation. Whereas 2 months ago I was watching an expectation as opposed to hope, and that was worrisome. And then when the gap started to grow, I was thinking, well, I just didn't see anything coming, and I didn't see any major change systematically from the management. I didn't see any major change from player personnel, whether that be positioning changes or even just switches on to up it from their own perspective. And again, it just got worse. And so we went in, I think it was 12 or 13 points down. And then, I looked at the clock at one stage, and I think there was 58, 59 minutes gone, and we were only back to where we were at half time. That's how far the game had gone away from us, And then then we kind of go to a more orthodox position, or orthodox setup, should I say, and we begin to claw the game back, which was even more disappointing. The biggest thing for me is when you go out to play and to perform, you try to perform. If you come away after performed exactly how you want to execute the game, and you try your hardest, and you go toe to toe, and you play almost your best, and you lose, fair enough. You can put your hands up and say, that's fine, we're beaten by a better team or a better individual. But when you don't perform or don't play to your capabilities and you get beaten, that can never rest easy. That's the hardest thing for the guys, because they didn't get the chance to perform. They would have loved to play that game again tomorrow and after. And that's the nature of the players that's there. It was extremely disappointing as a Galway supporter, obviously, but as a guy who played with them, a lot of them for a lot of years, let's say, you're fucking hard to break for the way that they went out. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And again, you'd love if they went, as I said, if they went toe to toe and they got beaten, fair enough, that's fair enough. But it's just the manner in which they went out, kind of limped out, and I could see a big problem on the day where the system they were trying to establish or trying to play was actually draining them of energy. And what I mean by that was they were trying to get the ball into the 2-man from forward line, and they weren't transitioning the ball from a deep enough position, so they were too far back and it was getting cut out by sweepers. And what was happening then is our halfback and the midfield were kind of hesitant because they couldn't, bypass sweepers. And if you're anyways hesitant at all in that type of situation, you're going to get absolutely ate up. It's a cauldron, And then the way Waterford set up and attacked, they sucked in our halfback line and they created massive channels on the outside, and they just came at us in droves, and they had real energy and penetration from their halfback line, and we just couldn't live with it. So I thought our system wasn't set up right. And they were there to, Dahi Burke is our best defender, again the best defender I've seen or played with in my lifetime, and he's the sweeper. That just didn't make sense. You know what I mean? Just didn't make sense. Like, even if you put him to midfield itself, whereby you let Sean Loftus be the midfielder, or be the sweeper, because Sean was getting kind of overrun at midfield, and he wasn't able to showcase his true skills. So I would have done a swap there, and I just didn't see anything coming at all, nothing. And it's bad when you see Conor Whelan rolling down with the management at one stage to push up, let's say, as opposed to being too defensive, And it kind of had striking similarities to the Limerick game last year, whereby we felt like we were too deep. Remember, we had 7 defenders there.
Yeah.
Limerick had 7 defenders. They cut us out over and over again, and we couldn't get bypass their defence when we needed to score something. And it's only, as I said, it's only when we went orthodox that we began to get some good plays out of the guys. And when good plays breed energy. Bad plays sap your energy. They just sap your energy, your adrenaline, your motivation. Whereas when you do something good, the crowd gets behind you, it gets you a bit of a buzz going again. So that's just the way it is, though.
Yeah, for sure. And I suppose, look, for my biggest issue would be, Waterford didn't exactly pull any rabbit from the hat. We were both in Pearse Stadium for the league clash between the two teams. I'm going to be right in saying, I think you were there anyway. And, it was pretty much the same game plan they brought. You know what I mean? They were going to run the ball. There was going to be men coming from the shoulders. They were trying to isolate Desi Hutchinson inside one-on-one, get him to win the ball and pop it out to that's coming. So there was no, for that, you know what I mean, for Galway, to not be prepared for this was most puzzling from my point of view, that we weren't, it seemed like we had no idea what the plan was, you know what I mean, or how to deal with this when we knew exactly what was coming down the line.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly, because even I was asked before the game, I said, where do you think Waterford, are going to come at us like? And I mentioned Callum Lyons is going to come down the line at us and shoot from distance. Ozzie Gleeson, you can't keep him you have to keep him out of the game because, the crowd get behind him. Jamie Barron's going to run all over the place and create, try to be a link man for everybody. And then I said Stephen Bennett with the freeze. So all those materialised. Everything there materialised. Jamie Barron got man of the match this day, and first of all, I thought Johnny Cohen should start on him, because again, Johnny Cohen has had a good record on Jamie Barron as a job from athletically speaking, and coming on from when Jamie Barron has established himself in the game is different than starting on him. because you can establish yourself on him. You know what I mean? So Jamie Byrne was obviously, I was already on a roll. So I thought Johnny should have started, if I'm honest, and he should have taken up Jamie Byrne. Callum Lyons is another one. If we're playing such a deep half forward line, there's no excuse for him getting up the pitch and being off the shoulder. Like he could have been throwing a goal at one stage in the first half. You know, up to point and then assisted 2. You know, like that just can't happen. And then for Jack Fagan's goal, he just ran through everybody. Yeah. And you're wondering what's going on here, like, you know. And it's terribly hard to put your finger on it, but I just think it was a systematic breakdown. That I don't think there was a plan in place, you know. And like I don't think the guys executed anything that they were told to do. That's unfair. And I don't think they were given a proper plan. You know what I mean? Because it kind of seemed that way when you look down at the guys at the pitch, that they were kind of looking around, wondering what should we be doing here. And then when they got the ball, they were kind of hesitant, waiting. Where am I supposed to put the ball, or is there a perfect opportunity? And it looked like there was a bit of overcoaching or a bit of over planning, whereby we want the ball in this spot. You know what I mean? And what Waterford had in a huge thing Waterford had was they had the relief ball of Desi Hutchinson. So Desi Hutchinson had massive pace in the corner, so they could just fire down to green grass and know they get relief off it. Desi didn't score, I think, but how many balls did he get on and hold up? And even if he shot and went wide, fair enough, give a chance to Waterford guys to reset. We didn't have that. No, we didn't have that at all because, like, again, systematic and team selections didn't allow itself that way.
Yeah. Like you'd wonder, like, dressing room wise, were there any issues, or you know, you'd hear stuff like that beforehand, you know, and you'd always hear this after defeat and stuff like that. But like even in the warm up, did you get any sense that there was going to be, you know, a backlash? Because we all assumed there was going to be a backlash from the Dublin game. But yeah, looking on, were you like we would have all expected it, wouldn't we, James? You know, from the manner of the performance of the Dublin, we said, right, okay, we'll park that now. Maybe there was a sense that, you know, we took Dublin for granted. Not saying that was right, but, you know, you can get over that for one day, provided you put in a performance the following week. You know, it's all about how you pick yourself up after your bad days. But like, you know, wasn't it so disappointing, wasn't it, that there was no backlash? I think it was 55 minutes on the scoreboard and we'd only 12 points, and I think 6 of them were from play. Like it was all around. And as you said, it was a systematic breakdown, but it was very disappointing that there was no backlash from the Dublin performance.
Yeah, I was fully expecting one. I've gone on record over the past 2 weeks saying that it's going to happen, like that the guys are going to have an internal review, management, the players alike going to have a review of the Dublin game. They're going to analyse it and fix it and come to training with great energy. And they probably did go to training with great energy, you know. Probably whatever they were told to do in training, the boys, I guarantee the players applied themselves 100%. You know, what way they were training, I don't know. In terms of what they were doing, because nothing seemed to translate. There's no evidence from the game on Sunday or Saturday to say that was a training ground effort, training ground move, you know. The dressing room, I think, was I don't think, as far as I know, there was nothing that was too bad going on, let's say. But again, you'd hear an awful lot of rumours coming out about lads in dressing rooms and sure, what didn't I nearly kill some lad in 15 and half time? I wasn't even in the dressing room. You know what I mean? I wasn't even there, but sure, I might have turned out none of it. You know? But like, you get these stories all the time. And again, I'd be fairly close to the guys, go through the guys still, but I'd never asked them, do you know what I mean, during the weeks, because you don't like that. Like, and even still, I haven't asked them now because, you know, it's not fair. In a couple of weeks, I'll ask them how are things and just see, you know, what they're feeling and what they're thinking. But I didn't hear anything. I don't think it's anything. I think it's a bit exaggerated if there was something like that said amongst the public. But again, there was no evidence to suggest that this performance was coming. Everything was pointing towards, you know, a big performance was coming because they had a quiet 2 weeks or 3 weeks. There was nothing said. I didn't hear anything about anything. Nothing from out of the camp. Nothing publicly was said. There was no interviews, no media. So I was expecting a big backlash. It just didn't come. Just did not come. You know, unfortunately.
Yeah. And could you put your finger on why? Like, or we don't know. Like, see, this is it. Like, you know, it's the $1 million question as to why it didn't come.
Yeah. See, what vexes me now, David, right, is people will say, Aaron, you know, they're too tired. They're overtrained, right? That vexes me now because that's the simplest thing in the world to say, right? I think there's so many phases or so many elements to this, should I say? Like there's all these 101%ers. You know what I mean? And like anything can tip the scale at all to go in your favour or go against your favour, right? So like, there's no question of personnel. We have the personnel, we had the personnel to challenge. You know what I mean? There was no question of that. No question of quality. I just wonder, like, was the team selection correct? I don't think so. Was the system we established correct? I do not think so. Did we plan correctly for the Waterford attacks, or do we for for the way they're going to come at us in the game plan? I don't think so. When you contribute all those things together, right, that takes your energy. That's why you look tired and you look lethargic, and then you start to overthink things and try to think too fast on the pitch. And when you think too fast on the pitch, you kind of think too much, right? Say, excuse me, your body slows down because it should be subconscious after, because you've trained so much. If I'm making sense, you know what I mean?
Of course, yeah.
So there's no one thing that happened, David. There's a few things that added up there. Let's say they're all culmination in just a bad performance. Again, a repeat bad performance. That's why I think there's a freshness needed in the team, whether that be on the sideline or on the pitch. There just needs to be a new rejuvenation, a new focal point, and a bit of blood. A bit of extra blood there on the sideline and on the pitch, if I'm honest.
Yeah, you mentioned team-wise there, and I know you wanted Johnny Cohen to start. Say that would have been one of the things you've done. But I believe, in fairness, now I will say that I think Johnny Cohen hadn't trained a whole pile in the lead up to the game. So so that might have been one of the reasons. In fairness, but for another personnel-wise, might have, for me anyway, would be that I think they got completely wrong. Was I think Evan Ireland had to start the game, just on form from the league. Just just what he's done so far, he's justified his place more than a couple of the other attackers, at least, anyway. And what he's done, I think he warranted to start. So to see him not start would have been a big point. Was there anything else that you would have thought team wise before pre-game? We'll say, because that Evan Ireland one kind of stood out to me pre-game in particular.
Yeah. I was I honestly thought that Johnny deserved to start. Now, in my opinion, if you're good enough to come on, you're good enough to start. So I thought from that perspective, when I saw Johnny coming on in the first half, I thought, right, he should have been started because he was good enough. Because the fitness was the question with the hamstring injury from the actual Waterford game in the league, So yes, he probably had a bit low mileage in the training, but I thought he should have started. David Burke, I think, from an experience perspective, I thought maybe he should have got a run through because, from the start, it's one thing bringing David and Johnny on, looking for a complete injection of something, you know what I mean, or a spark. But if you start them, let's say, and get yourself settled into a game, you know what I mean. Use the younger guys to finish off things. You know what I mean? So I thought them two could potentially started. Evan Ireland, I do agree with you. I thought we should have gone to an orthodox 15 because we're good enough to play an orthodox 15 against Waterford for sure. Different when you come up against the likes of Limerick, you may have to adopt something different, But I think against Waterford, an orthodox 15 would have suited us. And if that was the case, then Joe could have been played a full forward with Connor and Bino and Cannon either side of him with Evan at centre forward. That's the way I would be looking at things. But just whatever they saw in training, I didn't understand the Sean Lennon start the corner forward. I pretty much saw the team selection. I said he's not going to start corner forward. He's going to come out somewhere around the middle and create a bank of three. That's exactly what he did, but just couldn't get going. You know what I mean? And that's probably lack of repetition. Truthfully speaking, that's just probably lack of repetition. He was probably thrust into that position, and probably didn't have the hours or the minutes in that position to go out in the heat of championship battle. Because you go into a training game, a 10 or 12 minute training game is a far cry from a championship battle. So I thought it was a touch unfair on Sean as well to put him into that position. But look, it's easy for us now to review and to criticize. We're not criticizing, we're just analysing as much. But again, we don't have access to the training videos or don't have access to kind of players' form. But if you're just thinking solely on the matches that we've seen and the evidence that have been produced to us, you would have to say Evan should have been starting at 11. You know what I mean? He should have been starting at 11 with Joe at the helmet 14. And I'd love to see Cahill. I'd love to see Cahill and Joe Cooney, especially two of them together. Just go where you want. Do what you want. You know what I mean? We haven't got enough out of Joe Cooney because I don't think he's been given enough freedom to do what he can do. You know what I mean? Again, I think he's truthfully, as he's speaking, I think he's a victim of the system. When you have the brain that he has and the knowledge that he has to play the game, just let him do. When I came on the podcast here months ago, I said, let him do whatever the man wants to do. Pop up in places he wants to pop up, right? And not having been isolated one-on-one under puck house with three Waterford lads around him. Do you know what I mean? It's just because he was a victim of the system, in my opinion. And then what happens in he goes to wing forward, he's thrown into full forward check now.
Yeah.
That was a repeat for the last day. That's just not Joe Cooney is too good. He's way too good to be utilised to be played that way.
And I suppose you mentioned Cahill there as well. It's one of Cahill's most ineffective games for Galway. It just never seemed to get going. But it was a middle third battleground that was overly crowded. It wasn't the type of a spot for him, and we still could see the damage he did when he, probably we were a bit slow to switch things around. I know that a couple of injuries around midfield, before half time, and it kind of limited their options a small bit as well. But I thought there was an element when Cahill wasn't in it there, he probably needed to be moved from the middle third a lot quicker. And we saw the damage and the ability he has, like, because it's undeniable, you know. And he was probably him moving up on top of a few other switches, like Joe coming to wing forward, was the catalyst of changing the game, really, wasn't it?
Yeah. Like, again, like I was astonished, Dave, that like we conceded 118 in the first half, 114 from play, and there was no switches made. But no, I was astonished, absolutely astonished. You know what I mean? And like, we only scored 9 points, probably 4 or 5 of those from frees, and we didn't get our big players in the game. I actually don't think. Again, I'm open to correction now. I don't think Joe Kenning got the ball in his hand in the first half.
No.
Physically in his hand. I don't think he got it in his hand. So, like, that means your big players aren't in the game, let's say. So you have to make, you know, a systematic change. Like, for me, when things aren't going well, right, it's either the player, you know, the system, or the opposition, right? And if two of those three things go against you, you're not going well. Whereas in this instance, right, the system and the opposition were going against us. So we need to change players around the place. You know what I mean? That's my view on it. So one of those three things, if you can sway 2 of those in your favour, you'll likely win. If 2 of them are against you, you're going to lose. And that's the way it was in the first half. The system we adopted and was coming against us, and the opposition were killing us. You know, we didn't change it. Didn't really change it. Cahill is the type of fella that you give him the ball any way at all. You can go high, low, bouncing, scuttery ball. He's going to control it first touch, and he's gone. You know what I mean? So you need to get him on the ball. He's the Keane Lynch of the Galway team. He's the heartbeat of it, let's say. So he makes everything tick. You know, so you need to get him and kind of get him established and create an influence. And again, from his own perspective, he had a couple of shots in the first half. They sailed off wide. Who knows if they went over? Maybe a bit of confidence in him as well, you know. But he looked in fantastic shape. His touches were all great. And again, when he went into full forward, like, he caused havoc, you know, really did. And when Joe went to wing forward, so I caught a puck out, broke another one. You know, did well. You know, won a sideline of another lad, and like, again, he created a bit of something. He that's all I was waiting for. We're waiting for something. Just create something small. It doesn't have to be a magic moment the whole time. Just create something. Win a puck out. You know what I mean? And just like that, when we win 3 points down after that goal, the most important thing to do in the whole game is win that puck out.
Yeah.
You win that puck out, you're on the pig's back near to creating a victory. You know, but we lost the puck out, and ultimately then lost a free, and then another free after. Then it was too much of a task after that.
Yeah, like, it was a desperate second quarter. What was it? I think it was 1-9 to 2 points. We were outscored, and basically, you know, we left ourselves with too much to do. But another disappointing element was the bloody third quarter, James. Like, we saw Conor Gleeson's incident, and, you know, people will say it's a raid or it's not a raid. I think it's a raid anyway, but, you know, Derek McGrath will tell us it's different, not on the Sunday game. But like, I thought that third quarter was fierce disappointing. Like, we have an extra man. I think they outscored us was 7-3, I think, in the third quarter. And again, we're talking about backlash. Like, you're trailing at half time by 12. Like, you know, you would expect them to start reeling them in, and then start put the pressure on down the home stretch. So to lose that, and, you know, it's not just management, and it's not just the players. It's a combination of both that I think, you know, in the third quarter, that, you know, we didn't deliver, and that was another, you know, Jesus, talking about disappointments, but that was another fierce disappointing period of play.
Yeah, like, immediately when it happened, I saw the number in a man's back, right, Gleeson. I said, geez, that's a cornerback gone now. So if I'm a cornerback, right, or the manager of the opposition team, and my cornerback is sent off, right, that means I don't have a cornerback. I have to bring on a cornerback, or else, you know, should make a whole positional change. You know what I mean? So in my head, I was saying, right now, management, Galway, now go to Orthodox 15, shove in a forward there in the cornerback position, and make Waterford reshuffle the whole defence. Make them move a wing back and then move a midfielder, or bring on a fella and take off a forward. Make them do something that is going to take them out of kilter a small bit, right? We didn't do anything. We did nothing. You know, and then when there was a bit of a schmaltz underneath where we were, let's say, you know, in the first 2 minutes, and things were getting a bit heated, it was getting riled up, and I was thinking, now is the flipping time, now hit it, right? And then we would give away 2 frees we give away on the Thurman side. And it's again, when you're taking a step forward, you're taking 2 massive steps back, which ultimately, like, when you're chasing the game by 12 or 13 points, you don't want to be going that way. You want to be going south with the score as opposed to north, you know. And it just didn't happen. We just couldn't stop the rot. I'd often said to our guys, you know, teams involved in, like, when you're going bad, stop the rot somehow. If that means bring back 15 guys behind the ball for 5 minutes to stop everything, then do it. You know what I mean? Just don't allow a team to tack on, score like 118 in the first half is criminal.
Yeah.
You know, to allow 21 points in the first half is absolutely criminal. You know, like, can you imagine conceding 236 in the game? You couldn't.
No.
You know, it's like 118 in one half is just too much, and that's what again going to Orthodox 15 when Gleeson was sent off was a huge thing for me, because I think it would have created a small bit of unrest. And I do think it would have forced Liam Cahill to bring on a specialist cornerback, if you want to call that, or ultimately make him put a wing back to corner and bring on another wing back and possibly take off one of his forwards, someone up top, and then we could make a bit of hay up there. But again, didn't materialise like a lot of things.
Yeah, because when you examine the Waterford team, that full back line are really the only natural out defenders they have on the team, because the half back line or that full back line, should I say, but natural, the half back line are essentially 3 attackers, 2 midfielders that just like to get forward. Then you have the front 6 as well, who are all attackers. Like, so, I thought we could have got a lot of joy. Stephen Bennett is third choice centre back. At the end of the day, like, you'd want to be, he should be targeted like more than anything else. That's what.
Again, the system didn't allow him to target because he spent all the first half free.
Yeah.
And he picked up a ocean of balls. So when you put someone who's in a new position, a relatively new position for the team, and you make a hero out of him, and you keep giving him the ball, and he grows into the game, that's not what you want. You want those guys who are newer positions to be kind of suffering. You know what I mean? Like, I wanted to see Sean O'Brien in the goal suffering. And I wanted to see the 2 Bennett side by side suffering, because it's not their natural positions, you'd say. Get them guys suffering. Was Ozzie Gleeson's relatively first game against big opposition, the forwards. Get him suffering and get him missing. You know what I mean? So hit him hard. And it just didn't happen. Even our matchups weren't right. They just weren't within. Like, I remember when there was a Clare in 2018. Like, our matchups in the backs, perfect. Like, you had Dahi and John Conlon, you had Joseph Cooney and Peter Duggan. You had Henry and O'Donnell, Hartley and David Reedy, and they were all suited to those guys, to say. And if we move those guys around, let's say, and put different Henry on Conlon, it could be a different story. And it kind of felt like that way on Saturday, whereby we needed to put GMAC on Jack Fagan, stop him getting the ball, and we needed to keep Darren obviously and Desi Hutchison, and get Dahi marking someone like Gleeson. You know what I mean? Go up Gleeson's hole for the whole day. Put him out of kilter, and it just didn't really materialize. You know what I mean? I keep saying phrase over and over again, because we were here crying out for it, and I know it's a different kind of fish on the sideline because of the heat of battle. Like, time goes so quick. 5 minutes is gone in 5 seconds. But again, that's why you've got your backroom team beside you, your analytics team, because surely the stats will show up something. So that's why those people are in those positions to make those decisions quickly.
Yeah, and what makes the result even worse, I find, is the last quarter, and just finally showing what we can do. Like, 3-8 to 5 points, I think, in the last quarter alone, and 2-5 from the bench. Like, just, you'd be thinking, oh, Jesus, like, we're just sitting there. And the worst of all, like, if we went out and you just played entirely poor for the whole game, like, you'd be thinking, all right, okay, maybe this team now is, completely on the decline or whatever. There's something not right here. But the fact that they showed what they could do in the last quarter, really rammed it home even more.
Yeah. That was, again, that was a flash of what the boys can do, and like, it just it's disappointing. It's a bit like the Ireland final in 2018 when we just ran out of time against Limerick,
Yeah.
And you woke up after the final 15 minutes there as well, and it was the same kind of thing here, David. Like, it was a mixture of Waterford began to die. We had a numerical advantage, and we just said we threw off the shackles. That's what we did. We just threw off the shackles, and we went at it and tried to hurl as best we could, let's say, with what we had in a kind of an orthodox system. And you saw the fruition that, again, as you said, 3-8, like, that's monster scoreness there when you think of 15 minutes again. I spoke about 118 and a half. I'm talking about, now we're talking about 3-8 in the quarter. So 17 points in the quarter is massive. But again, it was too steep a hill to climb, I'm afraid. And again, there was big things that happened in that phase whereby, we lost a couple of frees. Again, there was a couple of frees there that I thought was, when we got back to 3 points the first time, and Sean Sack, those 2 frees that were scored in it, I thought they were both ridiculous. I thought they were both dives. Especially the one where your man went through in the red helmet and he fell over in 21. That's set 50 seconds off the clock again. And it was an easy point for Waterford. Like, that was, he fell for the dive, you know what I mean, and fought free for Waterford. That should have been a free out, in my opinion. Pádraig Mannion was held back. Pádraig was held back, when he was trying to come out with the ball. His hand was being held back and he pulled him forward carrying. How was that a free in? Like, just them kind of moments went against us. Normally, when things go well for you, those moments go for you. And again, I touched back on the couple of puckouts we lost. Just again, systematically, we didn't even from our own puckout. And for me, Derek was our second best player on the day, you know.
Mm.
And just that a couple of puckouts maybe could have gone a bit shorter, let's say, as opposed to going 1-on-1 down to a section where there was Waterford had the numbers and Waterford midfielders run the breaks. You know, you see, you look back over to see Jamie Byrne and Peter Hogan are, you know, they're onto a lot of the breaks where the guys are coming short. Maybe we could have hit 1 or 2 to keep them honest, you know. But again, like I said, that's what I said earlier on about all the 1%ers. It's very easy for me to say this now, but it's very difficult to execute on the game of play, on the field of play, should I say, and to see it all. You know, that's why real-time information is so important. You know, that's why you have all this statistics analysis and video people at the game to feed this information to players on the pitch. And I didn't see anyone going out feeding any information to players. You know, even before Waterford came out, let's say at half time, I would have pulled them in and congealed them up. You know what I mean? Get them riled up, let's say, just to get something going. You know, it didn't happen. You know, once again, I used the phrase, it didn't materialize. You know?
One thing that didn't materialize, in fairness, and we did get a lot of joy out of, was Jason Flynn's introduction. Like, for me, Jason Flynn is, you know, he's an enigma. Like, Jesus Christ, like, you know, there's no other way to describe him. Like just to see what he can do in, you know, I think it was 12 minutes he was on the field, you know, 12 minutes of normal time and whatever was added in injury time, and to come out with 2-1, like, and then he came on, you know, last year, and you know, he came on against Limerick in the semi-final, be hoping for a bit of joy. I don't think he felt the weight of the ball in his hand. Like, it's just like Jason Flynn has all the talent in the world, like, which is, you know, what frustrates, you know, myself anyway, and I'm sure Galway people as well, you know, and you don't want it because he seems like an awful nice fella, you know what I mean? Like, and I know he's trying his best, like, but you know, it's such a pity that we can't get this level of consistent performance out of Jason Flynn, because he'd be a nailed-on starter. Now, I know a few people said, I think it was Cyril Barrell said that maybe Jason should have started, but on the balance of what we've seen and evidence, and we talked about Evan Island in the league, Jason Flynn couldn't possibly start that game, given the body of work we'd shown from him during the league, and maybe, you know, even before that as well, even last year, you couldn't probably start him.
And Jason's is a good friend of mine, in terms of, like, hurling players, and you know, he's an awful honest young man. Let's say he comes from good stock up in Tom Larkins, and you know, he's an awful decent fella, right? So he won't mind me saying this now, I guarantee that. He's got bundles of skill, and I would have often told him he's got the same physique as someone like Johnny Benn, you know, so use it. Do you know what I mean? Throw it around the place there and cause a bit of havoc, you know. And like, he's got the best talent of you know, he's probably second to Joe or Cahill, do you know what I mean, with regards to talent and you know, God-given ability, natural ability. Like, he's probably up there in the top 3 with the 2 boys. And it's just, I just think he, you know, his performances probably in the league weren't where he wanted them to be, you know, and probably suffered a bit of confidence, you know, because you need to play well to be confident. You can't just turn on confidence. Like, you need to believe what you're doing is really good, you know, and belief comes with having repeated it, you know, a good performance or a good execution of something a few times. You know what I mean? You can't just turn it on, you know. When he came on the pitch and he looked like he was buzzing, enjoyed it. When I looked at him, right, it's the first time I saw him in a long while where he looked really in the zone. Do you know what I mean? That he was fed up of all the shit talk and fed up of all the things that were said about it, and said, right, I'm going after this, and he went after it. You know what I mean? And if he can do that, if he can go after it on a regular job, more regular say, or more consistent, like, he'd be an absolute nightmare to Dangerous. Like, he'd be your Seamus Kennan. You know what I mean? You'd situation him there at 14 and just say, go after it, you know. Like, because he's got such ability. If he didn't have the ability, no one would give a shit about him. You know what I mean? But he has the God-given ability, and he has, you know, he's a really good guy. He trains fierce hard. There's an awful lot of the S&C. He look after himself, like, so that's why you want him to do well. I really want him to succeed. You know what I mean? Yeah. Because he's such a good fella and such a good worker. He needs to probably get a bit thicker and just you know, kind of get fed up every day. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Some guys you have to put the arm around, some guys you have to let them off their own device, other guys you have to G up. Let's say, I think with J.O., like, you need to give him responsibility and say, right, you're the man. Now do it. You know what I mean? And let's say, see where that takes you. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, because we have seen when he is the man at Larkins and stuff like that, you know, what he can do. Like, just it's frightening, his ability. And like, no one would love more than myself or anything like that to see Jason Flynn flying out of the traps, like, you know, and I'm sure you'd be the same as well. Like, but I suppose look at on what positives? Look, we'll look back. There might be. They'll be quick. They'll be quick here. They're only here for. We have to give a word to Derek. Like his first senior championship start.
Brilliant.
Like, you know, coming in under these circumstances. You know, like what a performance. And you know yourself, like, you know yourself and Colin, you enjoyed your battle down through the years. So it's great now that Derek is there and he's on the fringes. And you know he's going to push Aina. And you talked about lads pushing. I think we said before, come on, 15 to 30 are probably, or 16 to 30 are the more as important as any positions, because you want them to drive it on. And I think we're going to get that hopefully now with Derek and, you know, Derek and Aina coming down, and maybe even Paddy Rabbit with the under-20s last day as well. Like, so that's a really positive sign. You were impressed with Derek's performance, weren't you, James?
Like you, even in real time, let's say I was kind of hoping he touched the ball early, like he got a catch early, and then as he least took a shot in the first half, like a low kind of a shot that's not coming fast, but it's coming, you know, kind of a bit slower than you'd like. The kind of shots, the one that Isaac Leeson, where Darragh Fave low to his left, you want that coming at a bullet because it goes with you. But when it's coming slow, you kind of have to go slow, and you can nearly miss it, you know.
Yeah.
But like he did well, like when we sharp goals were good, you know what I mean? Like there was one that was overturned that wasn't his fault. I thought the ball should be caught, and he kind of looked really confident. And you know, I loved. He looked so calm. He looked so calm and so kind of at peace of where he was, and that he was very content, and that he looked like he belonged there. And I don't like that. I don't like the opposite. I don't like lads, you know, being overly excited. Like he looked really calm, really poised. And I think what you said about the battle, like from a team perspective, if Galway are going to be successful, like we need 2 or 3 guys per position, you know, between the senior squad and the development squad. Like you need that, because you need that to go through league campaigns and go through, you know, heavy duty championship campaigns. And what I see now is with Derek and Aina is going to be a good battle. And like Derek, like this is by no means a set number 1 for Aina. No way. Like
no.
Now it's a full 50-50 now. You know what I mean? Because the way Derek has played, it's probably been it's been the best goalkeeping performance of Galway this year. You know what I mean, at senior level. Let's be honest about it. It is. So where things stand right now, you know, Derek is the last man to wear the jersey, so it's Aina's job to take it back off him. So now we've got created good competition. And then Paddy Rabbit has put together 2 pretty good performances in the 20s. So he's a young guy. What I would do is bring him in, you know, and tell him straight up, Paddy, you're not playing this year. And you might even play next year, right? But you're not playing this year. Your job is to get used to life as being a hurler, life in the training, what's expected of you. You know, make your mistakes off the pitch, because you will. You know, you'll mess up. You'll be there for training. You'll be caught out some night. You know what I mean? You'll mess up. Like, so make those mistakes, but then be ready to go. Because that was the biggest thing for me as a young fella. I don't think I wasn't coached for the first few years. I mean, even not coached from a physical or hurling perspective, but even on the life of a hurler and the life of it all, and what was expected of you. You know what I mean? And that's something I regret. But now, if you bring in the young fella and put the right people around him, you know what I mean, you could really turn a savage goalie in a couple of years' time. You know what I mean? And so now you've got a conveyor belt. You get me?
Yeah,
so that's
absolutely.
Hugely important. It's hugely important. I just think these guys need to be managed well. There's no harm having good competition and healthy competition, but always be looking one eye for the future. So what you have now, you've Aina and Derek has been probably 22, 21, and now we have Paddy Rabbit, who's probably 19 or 20. So keep the 3 of them together and let them have at it over the course of a number of years. You know what I mean? So that's important. It's really important.
Absolutely. And I suppose another thing we're just while we're trying to delve through the few of the positives, I suppose Dahi, his best game at centre back, I think it was undoubtedly his best game, you know, since he's gone back in terms of this experiment, and we got to look at it again. And, you know, I thought he had a real impact, you know, throughout the game, and particularly even when we were on the comeback, he was driving out with the ball, he was pushing forward, he was doing exactly what you'd want from a centre back. What have you made of the experiment so far, James? Like,
well, just before I answer that question, David, like when Johnny was driving on, it was like, you know, the way he'd be hitting the ball with Carl Flynn, and next thing he'd be there in a support run. When Dahi would pass the ball, he was crying out for a return, because he'd make a run then, but the ball wouldn't come or stop or get cut out. Do you know what I mean? So we didn't get the real Dahi work. Like Dahi was excellent, I thought, in like his touch was fantastic, his positions were pretty good. Waterford bypassed him. Waterford kind of got around him because they said they don't want the ball. A lot of the ball Dahi got was was given to him like by G-Mac and the boys, you know, who would cut out the ball, or Dahi was there to take the ball off somebody. You know what I mean? With regard to it was a one-on-one between somebody else. So I don't think it worked out perfectly. But the experiment, sure, what can you say? Sure, it didn't go well because we haven't won anything. Do you know what I mean? So like any experiment that we tried with, mustn't be, you know, I suppose regarded as success because we didn't win. You know,
Mm.
like any stroke, any management stroke is classed as genius when you win, even though it could be ludicrous. Any management stroke that when you lose is classed as poor. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
So look at,
And like, what would you do with him now, say, going into 2022? What am I saying? Yeah. So would you put him back to fullback, or like if it was you now coming in, say hypothetically, and you're free reign here and you could do what you want, what do you do with Dahi now for next year?
I think, look, again, having seen what we've seen over the last couple of months, probably the best thing is going back to fullback. You know, like I would have been all for this decision for the experiment to see how it goes because of what both guys can offer in each position. Only if the system breeds it. You know, if Dahi's going to be centre back and he's allowed to drive up the field, you know what I mean, on one day, or he's allowed to pick up a TJ Reid another day and have forward line, I have no problem with that. You know, but just we didn't have it that way. Do you know what I mean? So just hard to explain, Dave. So
yeah,
hard to explain.
This is just on the positives. Then just Whelan, like what a player! Like just every day, you know what you're going to get him. I think he's the only one from a Galway's perspective that'll be even close to an All-Star nomination. I think, from my personal point of view, and you might disagree with this, from now on, now with Joe particularly gone today, I think the team should be built around Conor Whelan's strengths and us getting as much as possible out of Conor Whelan. You know, that would be I think he's our top forward, out and out forward. Cahill might be, you know, in terms of linking the play and things like that, he might be arguably more important or something like that. But for Whelan, I think this is it now. This is the time we need to get absolutely everything out of Whelan, and ahead of 2022, I think build the team around Whelan, particularly the attack. Yeah,
like he's not the young guy anymore now.
No,
you know, like he's somewhat considered as a veteran now because he's been there since, is it 15 or
15? Yeah,
15. Yeah, so like he's got, you know, 5 or 6 years behind him at this stage, you know. So now he's a seasoned campaigner. He's given the role as vice captain, which is the one thing, but now he's got to just really show leadership on the pitch and really gather the troops around him and try reset the whole thing. I think he can do his best damage from the inside line, if I'm honest. You know, I think he just creates so much havoc with his strength and the way he can defend numerous people that the ball doesn't necessarily bypass him, because it can potentially bypass him in the half forward end a bit, whereby he's got lads all around him. You know, whereas if he can face off one-to-one with a defender inside, you get his best hurling. He's our best forward. There's no two ways about that as things stand right now. And I just think we need to utilise him the best we can. And he needs to really be like the TJ, win every ball and score what you can score. Do you know what I mean? And just be that focal point for us, that nucleus for attack going forward. Because like without Conor Whelan playing well, we don't win.
Yeah.
You know? Simple as that.
Yeah, I know you said it off the ball at the weekend that you probably expect maybe a few more retirements. We're obviously not going to name names or anything like that, but it's like we're likely to lose some real warriors and lads that you've trucked along with James down, you know what I mean, for, you know, a decade now at this point. It's sad in a way that we're seeing this, you know, and, you know, particularly the way we bowed out. You know, if you got to an All-Ireland final and you lost to Limp, or, you know, you lost in an All-Ireland semi-final, you could, you know, it's sad to see some of the best players that I've ever seen in my lifetime, and that we're ever likely to see again to bow out in such a way. But I suppose one point would be, you know, like there's still lads there that are still, you know, they're still not 30, you know, they might have been in the best of form at the moment, but like, you still need these young lads that are coming through. We're hearing a lot about these young lads at 20s and minors. Like, these lads have to come on out and push these lads out of the way. It's as simple as that. You know, they're not going to be just handed the jersey for no reason. These lads are still there. They have the body of work done, we'll say. But it's kind of a point in time, or it's a sad enough time from a Galway point of view that we're seeing, you know, some of the best lads we've ever seen, you know, that they might be involved next year. Yeah,
like I think when I mentioned about the retirement situations at the weekend, like I was kind of say, like some people were coming at me saying, "Oh, you were asking lads to retire." Like that, I was not asking lads to retire. I was just thinking, when you look at the whole thing globally, right, and where people are in their lives, and where Galway are at the minute, the team is at the minute, you know, lads might retire. Do you know what I mean? Because there is more to life, you know, and people tend to take this game extremely seriously. You know, there's an awful lot more to life. And like when I made my decision, it was my focus was on family life and professional life, you know, and then the hurling life came in a distant third or fourth, you know. You know, it wasn't just about Galway getting better, you know, whatever that I said, I'm out of here. No, it wasn't that. It was everything is judged collectively. And I do think that when some guys and that squad look at everything collectively in their own situations, that you could have, again, 3 or 4. Like we've already seen, you know, our best dude is the first guy up, let's say. You could potentially see 2 or 3 more, you know. And And if they don't, great, like they're ready to go again, as long as they're ready to go. You know, because you're either all in or you're all out. You can't be in the middle. It's just the way the game is at the moment. Like, it's on a professional basis right now, not whereby you can come in twice a week and, you know, train and go away. Like, you can't. You're all in because it's a full-time job, let's say, and that's something people don't realize. And then you touched on the young people, then David, like 17, like the minors is, you know, it's lovely winning minors. It's great, like, you know, don't get me wrong, but they're still just 1 year away from the 16s, these lads, you know. So like, I'd love to see an Trinity title this year, another one next year. Like, look, Cork now. Cork have won one, and the Devils now are probably looking to beat Limerick to get another one. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like, it's them lads are coming. There's a bit of a red wave down there, like, and you can flip and sense it. You know what I mean? Now we need to flip and stop that and stem that. And our 20s to win it. You know, we need them to win that. And we need them to win it next year. And if we win one or two of those, you know, then I'd be convinced that some of those minors then can turn into something that can really benefit the senior squad. Because right now, I don't know. You know what I mean? I haven't seen any minor over the last couple of years that is ready. You know what I mean, to come in now. So like, I need to be convinced. You know.
Yeah.
And that's not trying to be. That's in no way trying to be dismissive of any guy who was won a minor. But the fact of the matter is, for me, it goes up in levels. So if you win a 20, that's a much better medal to win than a minor. And if you win a senior, it trumps them all by 1,000,000%. You know what I mean? So I'm looking forward to see what our 20s can do in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, you like just on the 20s, I suppose you mentioned Paddy Rabbit perhaps coming in next year. You know, it would be a likely person to make the step up. But who else would you like to see from the 20s you've seen so far? There are a couple like I wouldn't mind now seeing, say, Ian McLean coming in and maybe getting a run during the league. I know he's another year left to 20s, but you know, skill wise, and you know, I think he's someone who could potentially. He's kind of a small bit of the Davy Burke mold. Like, he's able to get around. He's a good stick man. You know, now he's a lot to do before he catches up to Davy Burke. But anyone else in that squad that you might see, or
I really like. I like two players. Like, I like O'Shea. I think he's a stylish hurler. I think with a mix of bit of bulk. You know what I mean? He comes from really good stock. That's obvious. So he looks like a smart hurler. He's always playing heads up, like, you know, and like his finishing is going to come on better. His S&C is going to come on better. I think he's a good guy that could do something really good for Galway in kind of future years. I like him an awful lot. I like his name escapes me now, but the guy from Aircourt who played full power for 20s this year.
Flynn. John Flynn. Yeah.
He looks a bit raw, do you know what I mean? And a bit of a guy that could strike you off the ball as quick as on the ball. He looks that way to me. He's a great man to work the ball. What I see, I've been really impressed with him over the last couple of years. I played against him in a couple of challenge games with the seniors versus 20s there last year in 2020, and you know, he's a handful. Like, so I think he could do something for the seniors as well. So I know there are two forwards we keep looking at as well. And McLean is a nice hurler. You know what I mean? Size could be questioned. I don't know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I like Owen Lawless. I like him. I think he's a nice little hurler that you could use. And then I've already touched on Paddy Rabbit. And then there's a young fellow there in our club as well, like Collins. I haven't seen him perform perfectly yet for the 20s, but again, my brother Liam book with the challenge. He's just, you know, a bit like J.O. You know, he needs to get after it. You know what I mean? Simple as that. You know, do all the work that's necessary. So there's some good guys there, really good guys that can make a step if they choose to do so. You know, because a lot of people ask me, Dave, like, why aren't you winning Ireland when you've got 1 million minors? You know what I mean? And like, you can make all the excuses you want, and we can sit here and debate this for days, right? But a large percentage of the guys who come through don't want to do the work. That's it. Or they're put off too easily by having to wait on a panel for a year or two, or put off by, you know, not getting enough social recognition for it. You know, these are the things that's why I would put a good 50 to 60% of those guys that come in don't want to do it. That's it, because it's hard going. It is a choice. Don't get me wrong, but it's a hard choice to make when you do commit, because it takes a lot of your life. And you know, that's whatever guy I'm naming out there now in the last few minutes. If they come in, as I said to you earlier on, they're either all in or all out. You know what I mean?
Finally, and the most important question of the day, James. Everyone I want to know: is this the year for Kepi? Is this the year you finally do it? You mentioned young Collins there. He's stepping up this year, hopefully. So, you know, this is the one that's on everyone's lips now. So I have to ask it.
Well, we played a league game last night, David, and Gort beat us by 14 points. So on yesterday's evidence, no, we didn't. We're not going to do anything. But look, I'm hopeful. All I want to see is us to give a good account of ourselves. That's all I ever ask for the boys. You know what I mean? And the same way, the senior people in our club, like Joyce and the lads, if we just give a good account of ourselves, and if we're honest effort, like I said to you earlier on the podcast, if you show up and you give your best effort possible and you kind of perform, you'll take whatever result comes, right? And we've had our hard luck stories over the last couple of years. That's fine. But them days are gone. So it's time now to do something good. And we've got a bit of injection young lads. Like, it's nice to see Liam Collins doing well on a national stage. You'll say, but that's fine. That's done now. So now come back and do it for Cappy. And it sounds a bit foolish for me to say that, like, but and they're kids. They are kids to a certain extent. But let's see it again now. Do you know what I mean? Let's see it again. Let's back it up. And it's me challenging them, like, because again, I'd hope the challenge will be reciprocated for me to perform well and so what. And that's the only way you breed a bit of flipping success into a team, is if you go challenge each other and try and make each other better. So I'm hopeful, I'm wishful that we get back to where we were last year and go one further, two further, if you know what I mean, and see where it takes us. But there's an awful lot of teams out there like who are putting in massive effort. You're going to have your usuals, your Thomases, your Turlock Moores, and your Lochrays and whatnot. Like, Gort looked pretty good last night, and there's always going to be someone that's going to surprise you. Someone's going to come out of the blue that you didn't expect. Could have been Ord more this year. Could be Mellows again. You know what I mean? So there's always someone that's going to come out of the blue, and it's going to be a difficult championship. It's probably the most difficult championship in the country to win in terms of club. So look, we give it a right flipping rattle anyway. That's for sure. That's what we always do.
Yeah, I'm going to say something here now, and I think when you get to Kinney Park and you are to play Gort come championship time, I don't think you'd be beaten by 14 points anyway. You're a different element when it comes inside when it goes inside that fence. Look at James. Thanks a million so much. Thanks a million for your time. We leave it there for now. Sure. Look, it's going to be a long winter, and sure, at least we'll have club championship to look forward to. Thanks again.
No bother, David. Thank you.